Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Carefulist, the podcast. I'm Katie Christophic, founder of The Carefulist. Today, we are welcoming Susanne White to talk with us. She is an author, a blogger, a caregiver, and recently also a care recipient. Welcome, Susanne.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so looking forward to this conversation. Oh, and the laughter is already started. So, let's start at the very beginning. What is your caregiving story?
My first caregiving story, because there've been a couple journeys in my life,
Yeah.
is the one that started with my parents.
Mhm.
And they were in their 80s. So, of course, one would think that, you'd be prepared for thinking perhaps something might happen. But as so many of us, I was sort of not in denial, but, not really, that wasn't top of mind. I was working full time and both of them were doing seemingly well until the day that my sister called me during the holidays. We had flown my parents down for the holidays to my sister's and to my sister in Florida. And she called me and said they just took daddy. They had to take daddy off the aircraft, the airplane in a wheelchair because he was too
Mm,
sick and tired to get off by himself, which is, like my dad was in a stoic, tall World War II bombardier hero pilot who had
mm.
been wounded. I mean, and survived. And, I mean, he was,
Yeah,
so the fact that he was that sick and tired was the first indicator. And then when I flew down and we were, hanging out and talking and everything, it became obvious to us because my dad was sleeping so much. He had, walking pneumonia
Mm,
that yeah, and some heart issues that were starting to rear their ugly head. When I said to him, "Hey, Daddy, what's going on?" We could sort of notice that my mom was a little confused and repeating herself. So they had hidden it from us. They were working
mhm.
together to hide it from us, and they were
Oh,
such a
yes.
good team. They were such a good team, and they had bonded. He came back. She had lost her fiance in World War maneuvers, and he came back wounded.
Hmm.
Um, and they kind of bonded. My mom always said they were bonded through their grief. They fell in love through their grief. So they had a bond that was just so they were able to really kind of negotiate together and and hide it from us. So the
Yeah,
cat was out of the bag, and I said to my pop, "Hey, Daddy, do you want me to help you?" And he said, "Oh yeah, super, that would be great." So I was like, there it was. So as we all do, we show up, right? And
yeah.
having no idea what I was in for. And it turns out that he had some serious heart issues going on. So, well, she's being forgetful, and I fainted last week. Like, when were you going to tell us that, guys? So it was interesting. But I was ready, and I love them. My relationship with my mom wasn't great, but I love them.
Hmm.
And and there's always one. My sister geographically was removed, so I was closer to them. So you show up,
Right. Yeah. Oh.
unprepared, unready,
And then
but
both
with
of
good
them at
intention.
once. And that's really tough too. It's hard enough to manage the care of one, but when you have both, that's
Yeah,
obviously it's not double, it's exponential.
yeah. And you don't think about it. I mean, it wasn't something, like I, you don't make an Excel spreadsheet with the pros and cons. Do you know what I mean? Let me think about, it's just, it didn't even hit me. It was just like, okay, this is what the situation is that as far as I can see,
Right.
I'm showing up for this and let's go.
Yeah. So it's hard to keep a sense of humor when you're going through something like that. Were there moments, and if it's not humor, maybe moments of joy that you found with each of them or individually?
I think that's probably a lot of the gifts of caregiving, and in hindsight, because obviously I'm not in the midst of the experience, because when you're in the midst of the experience, I've written a blog that said I've lost my sense of humor and I want it back.
Yeah.
Um, it's in when you're in the midst of it, it's harder to see that the joy is there, especially in hindsight. But we all have a really good sense of humor in my family, and
Hmm.
it's always been sort of a mainstay. I use it a lot as a defense mechanism. That's how I was always the one that makes jokes, and my sister too. However, on the other side of that, we're really like roll on the floor, kind of like, milk spitting out of your nose, kind of. I mean, we. And my parents are both very funny in their own ways. So
Yes.
I think the blessing was that there were times when the irony of it was really funny.
Yeah.
That that we would just look at each other and go, "Oh my God, this is like so bad. It's
Right.
funny." You
Like
know what
you
I mean?
couldn't write this bad of a comedy kind of thing.
Oh no. And I think when you walk through life with humor, when humor serves you well, I think you look at things are funny, I mean,
Yeah.
for some reason yesterday I was talking about the dual I had dueling wheelchairs at one point. Like they were each in a in a wheelchair. So I was like, okay, let's do dueling wheelchairs, and we would all kind of
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it was silly, it was ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
who does that? I mean, who
Well,
has to do that?
and how do I mean, for kids, they have the double-sided strollers, right? But those are big enough for little kids. Like, how do you do two wheelchairs? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make light of it, but
No.
it is kind of funny visually. Do you make like a train? Does one push the other and you push both? Or,
Well, so I did everything from trying to lock them into each other, like as much as you could, to like
yeah,
one in the middle and then on the side. I mean, and no, it was never easy. And and you'd have to take one and then you bring one behind and then you maybe push the other. I mean, and we would get laughing because it was just, I
yeah,
mean, look, there was so much pressure, and the stakes are so high when you're caregiving for somebody else, right?
right.
So, I mean, it's just so serious. And there were times, and I mean, a lot of cursing. I just found out recently the cursing's real. Like there's studies, the cursing's real, and I curse like a sailor. I won't do it here, but I curse, and that's good for you. They say it's like it gives you
Yeah,
endorphins. But I mean, it would just be banging, and it was just, and you would just have to, you just do the best. It's like you just do the best you can.
right, right. And that's the gift that you give to them. And they always know that you're doing the best you can. It's
Yes.
not always shown or appreciated in the moment,
Right.
the way maybe that the caregiver wants or needs it to be,
Right.
but it is acknowledged. And everyone who is a caregiver or has been a caregiver knows you're doing your best. And that's
Yes,
all
and
anybody can ask.
absolutely. And you've just brought up like a very, very powerful concept because I think what we have to do is really remind caregivers that just by showing up, you're doing a great job. I think we really get caught up in, I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist. We get caught
Mhm.
up in this perfect caregiving
Yeah,
expectation, which doesn't exist. And the bottom line of it is the people we care for, they don't need that. They don't need us to be
right.
perfect or fix them, or even if they don't tell us, just being there, like having somebody that they feel safe with, who they
Yes.
know has their back,
Hmm.
whether you do anything or nothing.
Right.
It's so powerful. And we really lose sight of that when we're in the thick of it.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And caregiving is hard enough without the expectation of perfection. Um, and, for anybody who's had a hand in raising a child, whether it's their own or a niece or a nephew or whatever, it's the same thing. Like it's never gonna be perfect. Um, and people, like you said, people discount how much it
Mhm.
means that you showed up.
Mhm.
Because if you look around,
Mhm.
family, friends, or otherwise, who else showed up?
Yeah.
So the fact that you're there already puts you way far ahead of the game.
Yes, absolutely. And it's extremely appreciated. I mean,
Yeah.
when you, even for me, like when I, if I trust someone or I feel safe with them, or they give me a space to feel like I can be who I am, no matter the warts and all, no matter what I do or say, that's
Mhm.
invaluable, and what a life gift. I think that sadly we forget the sacred part of caregiving, which is
Yes.
being there for someone else and helping them walk home. It's not about fixing them or the situation. It's
Right.
about being there
Yes.
and saintly.
Right. So I think that leads us to the next part of the conversation. I think it's a good segue is what is the best thing that someone did for you while you were in your caregiving experience? The support or advice or whatever it might be.
We had a family friend. My parents had a family friend, Buddy. His name was Buddy. I mean, that was his nickname, and it was perfect. And he would very calmly counsel me because
Mm.
it's very hard to tell me anything. I'm very stubborn, just like my mom. And but he would take the time to have a conversation, a very gentle conversation with me, and consistently bring me back down to earth by saying things like, Suzanne, go outside for 5 minutes. Because if
Mhm.
God wants to take them, he's very, very Catholic, because
Mhm.
older than me. If God wants to take them, he's going to take them, and you could go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
Like, it's not
Right.
in your control. You need to take care of you, and you don't have control. Sorry,
Yes.
but you don't have that. So anything could happen. We can't plan, we can plan for the future. We can't predict the future. And you need to do stuff for yourself. So it'd be constant conversation and very, not with an attitude, not yelling at me, just a very gently, but he would get in my face a little bit with it in a very like older brotherly kind of way and just
Mhm.
bring me around to the logic of the fact that I was enough and I was
Mhm.
doing enough. I think
Yeah.
having, that kind of a support system, somebody who has your back about that and
Mhm.
continually tells you, you are enough, you do enough, and you're amazing. I had an
Mhm.
aunt that did the same thing too. My dad's older sister was,
Mhm.
you are the best. I can't get over. You're the best daughter in the world. We're so lucky to have you. I mean, just that's
Yeah.
that kind of, support system cheerleader.
Right.
I
Yeah.
needed
Oh,
that. I needed
that
that.
matters.
And I also had a sister who didn't give me a hard time. Like my
Yeah.
sister, she never said anything other than, oh, whatever you think, okay.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah. She
not because
wasn't
she
Monday
didn't.
morning quarterbacking.
No, no.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that she didn't have opinions or that I didn't want them, but she
Hmm.
just trusted me. I felt that she trusted me with my parents' care.
Hmm.
Invaluable. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something that made me think of a meme I saw the other day. Um, and I just have to share it because it made me laugh because I'm very much like my mother. And it's a cartoon of somebody saying, you're really stubborn. And the response is, how dare you insult my stubbornness? I got that from my mother. Or it was a gift from my mother or something like that. And I just think of that a lot because I'm like, well, you know, my mom's name was Vicky and my husband and I joke, he'll be like, oh, hi, Vicky.
Oh, don't you hate when they do that?
Only a little. But it's also a compliment. You got to take
It
it with.
is. It is. It's an extraordinary compliment, really, and I always, my mom and I did not get along at all. And and I used to think it was because we were so different. It's because we were exactly alike. I mean,
Yeah.
we were so much alike. And, caregiving healed that relationship. That was that talk about gifts.
Yeah.
I healed that relationship with my mom. She had dementia.
Hmm.
And wow, none of the, not therapy or or sobriety or anything like did for me what my caregiving journey did for my relationship with my mom. It was life changing.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
So, when we talk about caregiving, you have the lucky you, the 360 view of the caregiving experience because you recently became a care recipient. Can you talk to us about that experience?
Yes, yes, kicking and screaming. I became the curious. Yes, so my balance was off very quickly. My balance was off, and I because I was a caregiver and I know how to
Mhm,
push the envelope. I demanded an MRI, got
mhm.
one, and they found a benign meningioma tumor in the back of my head that was like the size of a tangerine that I had had
Oh,
for like probably 30 years.
mhm.
So they had to get it out because it was on my spine, it was leaning, my spine was like this way. So I had to have brain surgery. I went from like, total health, never anything. I'm fine, walking 8 miles in
Yeah.
New York City, and so yeah, I had to bite the bullet and do that. And I had wonderful care. I had great family members that were there for me, and
Mhm.
family and friends. So yeah, I was on the other end of it, and I promised myself I was going to try to be a guinea pig and watch myself as much as I could. And it was interesting. It was very interesting. So the one thing that I mean, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself and about the people around me. But the one thing that struck me was how hard they worked to make me think they weren't scared.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
you
Yeah.
know, and and I thought, oh my God, I do that. So they were straining with so much energy to make me,
Yeah.
and I know, you know them. And of course, and we all do it as caregivers, and
Right.
they know that we're like, So I said, I said, okay, guys, let's look, I'm scared. You're scared. Let's talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I would have conversations like, hey, if something happens to me, because there was certain things that we had to do, and let's talk about it. And I want to tell you how I feel and let's get
Mhm.
stuff in order. And,
Yeah.
but the bottom line of it is you're scared and I'm scared and that's okay. It's scary.
Right.
What can we do for each other and how can we support each other? And thank you so much, but like, let it loose. Like you're freaking yourselves out, you're stressing yourselves out
Yeah.
to try to, and I can see it anyway. And it's not
Right.
helping me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like, do you know something nobody's told me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting because I had two procedures. Well, I won't get into all, but they have, they have to do like a GPS of your brain and they have to like cut off blood vessels and stuff. So they go up like with cameras and stuff before you're even on the table to get it taken out. And that's probably more of a dangerous operation. I mean, they were both dangerous, but anyway, so I had a family member. So I survived the first one. And, when I was leaving the hospital, she just like lost it on the street. And I said, whoa, what's going on? She said, I looked up the procedure.
Oh no.
It was really dangerous. I went, why did you look up the procedure? I told you it was dangerous, but I
Right.
shouldn't have looked it up, but and held that in until I was okay. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
the life of a caregiver, it's sort of how to find that balance of getting information, doing research, and not like, you know,
Hmm.
freaking yourself out. But that's the nature of what we do. A lot of what happens is serious and a lot of it is
Yes.
terminal,
Hmm.
and that's where all the pre-grief comes in, which we're not aware of a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as a caregiver, it is hard to find that balance of what is too much information because you are that person's advocate. So you feel the responsibility to know all of the things so you know what questions to ask or what words to listen for from the healthcare professionals that make you go, oh, okay, so we're dealing with this, or now I need to ask about this. And so, you kind of involuntarily become a healthcare professional yourself, but you don't have
Yes.
all of the information that you need to not freak out. It's a very, very delicate balance.
It is. It's an extremely delicate balance. And the one thing, and I don't know that you may feel the same way that I do about this, what I found worked for me, or I made it work, was there were certain healthcare providers that weren't my kind of people.
Yeah.
They weren't giving
Hmm.
me the information I wanted. They weren't open and receptive. I didn't feel like they should be a member of my care team.
Hmm.
And when the insurance permitted it or I could do it, I fired them.
Hmm.
I wasn't, I was gracious about it and do whatever I had to do. But I had one doctor for my dad post his open heart surgery that like almost threw him on a table. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Gone. I went out to the front desk. I said, yeah, I'm done. Give me somebody
Hmm.
else. And also said, I can't help you. He had an issue, and it's post surgery. I can't do anything. Got somebody else in the practice, and completely changed. Did a little procedure on my dad, and completely gave him back a really important part of his life. So, I'm not advocating for not being gracious or understanding, but if care providers aren't giving you what you need and you can safely do it,
Hmm.
there's so many more out there. And I find I get so much of a better personality. And for
Yeah.
me, that was really important,
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like a 50 question person. I'm like, I will come at you with 50 questions because
Hmm.
that's who I need to be to feel safe. And if that
Yeah.
doesn't work for you, sorry.
Right. Yeah. Well, and one of the things during our caregiving journey that I figured out over a longer period of time than I would have liked, but it's something that I like to share with people is yes, they may be a doctor. Yes, that means that they're XYZ amount of smart and they've put in all of this time and whatever. But there's a first in that doctor's class and there's a last in that doctor's class. And you may very well be dealing with the person who just barely passed. And so it's a business. I mean, we can have a whole conversation about whether healthcare should be a service or a business, but right now it's a business.
Mhm.
And you have every right to take your business somewhere else.
Absolutely. They are your employees,
Hmm.
period.
Right.
And then on the other hand, and again, and it took me a while to get this. This is not something which is great that we're having this conversation. It's a really important conversation because some people wouldn't even think about this or don't have the personalities to stand up.
Hmm.
My dad's a brain surgeon, sorry, my dad's heart surgeon. My dad was 87. So,
Yeah.
that was a big deal. And we went to
Hmm.
an incredible hospital, University of Pennsylvania. It was amazing. And my dad's surgeon was one of the most obnoxious guys I ever met in my life. But
Wow.
intuitively, I mean, he got in the elevator with me with my sister before we even met, like officially met him. And I looked at my sister and went, oh my God, that's the guy. And she
Yeah.
goes, I know that that's him. Sure enough, it was him. And as he was leaving the room and he told my father he had to have an operation, he wouldn't live for 6 months. He leaned into me and said to me, if you're going to do this, he said, do it fast because he's going down fast, and then left the room. Okay. All right. So that's the guy. But
Uh-huh.
intuitively, I knew he was brilliant. He
Yeah.
was, had this brilliant, and he got it. And he was the
Hmm.
guy to do the operation. And sure enough, he did an amazing job with my father. And he was a completely different guy afterwards. He said, he said, 87 is pretty late for me to be operating. He said, I don't do that for everybody, but your dad really impressed me. And you know what I mean? So having said that, it's a balancing act too, I mean, that was
Yeah.
the right choice. He was the right guy at the time, even though I had to deal with him being so obnoxious.
Yeah. Well, maybe yeah, that's true. Sometimes they play their own game of, are you really listening to me? Are you really thinking about what this entails for your loved one? Because you do get into situations where you could have an operation, but it doesn't mean a quality of life. And
Mhm.
so, is it in the best interest of the person receiving the procedure? Um, I have a lot of respect for the healthcare community. Um, there's a lot to be desired on all counts because as it turns out, needing care is crappy. I mean,
Yes.
it's not fun. It's not a good time.
And it's scary, but yes, and I think, and we're all different personalities. I mean, I think that's, we're all different. We're all unique, aside from our talents and skills and whatever, we all have different backgrounds. We're all unique. So sometimes we gel, sometimes we don't. And I agree with you because sometimes you have, and I like the dog, I I think that there are like two different types of people in the healthcare industry. I think it's changing because I think it's a mentality that in their education system, you have
Mhm.
like one who's like at any cost keep them alive.
Yeah.
Like I saw, I took an oath, keep it, and I think then more recently, I think we have people who quality of life and end
Hmm.
of life is a much more critical part of the care
Yes.
journey. And I think unless they're kind of a balance, you could run into people that are for with best intentions
Hmm.
may not be feeding you the information or having the discussion that you need to have. And
Right.
it's a lot of responsibility for caregivers, and I honor what you're saying about all this, but I think we really have to we just have to make sure we're getting what we need and what they need, like
Yes.
that we're entitled to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is a business relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I love smart but doctors and nurses. Because my whole family sort of lives in, the world of smart butts.
Yeah.
And humor is really good in it. And maybe that surgeon was being funny to me when he was leaving the room. I mean, I was in such a state of shock that my dad might die in 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe that, so, but I mean, people with a sense of humor,
Hmm.
I tend to lean towards, I mean,
Yeah.
and yet I respect somebody who's really serious, but it just seems that healers that have a sense of humor are a little more powerful.
Yes. Yes. Because it's not the robotic procedure. They have the humanity aspect. And, it depends on what you're looking for. But myself personally, I need someone who has that humanity approach for
Mhm,
sure.
mhm. I agree completely. And I also, and I don't know how, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I like someone I can negotiate with. Like,
Yeah.
that I feel is hearing me or hearing us, and I think
Hmm.
that's what you were talking about, that quality of life that's important to you. Yeah, it's like, like, well, that doesn't feel good to us. Is there something else we can do? Is there a Hail Mary here?
Right. Yeah. Someone who's
Yes.
willing to discuss all the scenarios and kind of pro and con it out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as someone who recently was on the receiving end of care, um, is there anything about that experience that if you are in the caregiving seat again, you would change or that you would look out for?
Great question, Katie. I think I think the really transparent, honest answer to that question
Mhm.
is I might have I might have done a little more research on the healing process. I think
Mm,
look, I was in the number one neurosurgery hospital in the nation. I had an incredible team. They treated me like a rock star. It was just amazing.
mhm.
And they do really high-end stuff and even for athletes and I think that they're very positive and I think that drives the healing process for us. I think it's because
Yeah.
it's a very I think that the expectations that I had on myself in my world that I could recuperate and heal
Mhm.
so fast and do it perfectly. It's this perfectionism thing. Like I even bring
Yeah.
perfectionism to healing from brain surgery. So I think that as somebody who needed care and still does in certain ways, I think that having a better doing more research about how to heal, be kinder to yourself as you heal,
Yeah. Yes. Be
and
patient
having
with
that
yourself.
being patient. I think
Yeah.
patience is, and I think that we get caught up both on both ends.
Hmm.
I think we both get impatient, and I think it's what we think. I think on both sides, like what we think everybody else is thinking of
Yeah.
us.
Right. Yes. Yeah. We worry about the judgment, and we live in the social media world where there is the judgment, and there's also this expectation that everything is instantaneously fixed, delivered, perfect, whatever. And things just take time.
Yes. And they should
Yeah.
take time. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Just because you're not getting immediately better doesn't mean you're getting worse,
Yes. Oh, that's really very true.
you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
And we completely lose sight of that. I mean, I would say that I'm, maybe 70% right now, and it's been 2 years, and I have a
Hmm.
feeling, and I still and I'll still be, and I can see that I'm still healing. So I think
Hmm.
there might be even more, but it's 2 years. Oh, it's 2 years. I believe it or not, just joined a Facebook group for people who have had brain surgery like mine. Some of them are like, it's been 5 years. I'm just now getting you know what I mean? And I'm like, really? So it's this thing that we do. And
Yeah.
then on both sides, we expect those we care for. But again, just because we're not getting better doesn't mean we're getting worse.
Right.
We're still on our way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so difficult to have expectations as a caregiver, and then certainly as the care recipient, because then both of you feel like you're letting one another down. And that leads to a whole other host of challenges between you, in terms of your relationship, which has already changed,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to adapt to. And I think communication for me personally is
Mhm.
just epic. And the more
Yes.
I talk through things, I talk way too much, and I might drive everybody around me crazy, but it soothes me, because I get information. I can tell, sharing our stories or sharing how we're feeling is just so powerful and impactful. I mean, it makes such a big impact, and it shifts things. It shines a
Yes.
light on things, on the shame and the guilt and the expectation and the judgment and the shame. I mean, it's just,
Right.
yeah. And we
Yeah.
don't have time for all that stuff. That takes so much energy.
Right.
When you're dressing wounds and changing cath bags and getting medicines and running around to doctor's appointments and emergency rooms, and you
Mhm.
don't have time to be guilty or feel shame or have expectations or judge anybody or feel bad about yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember thinking, and this is so stupid, but it's true, and I will share it. Um, During COVID, I took my parents to get their vaccines. And my mom was in a wheelchair, my dad very self-sufficient, and all of that. But it was COVID, and pre-COVID, I had been dyeing my hair. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, I now have very silvery gray uh, parts of hair, especially in the front. And so it was like full inches of gray. Excuse me. And then the rest was my dark brown color. And so I had my mask and all of these roots showing, and it was in my hometown. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm going to run into somebody I grew up with and I have I look like a frump. I'm in like, old jeans and who cares? Who cares? And so we're standing in line and I'm thinking about this and then I'm looking around and going, this is the middle of a hopefully once in a lifetime pandemic. It does not matter that you have gray roots.
Right.
And that was the moment I got over dying.
That's amazing. What a great story. What a great story. That just points out what we do to ourselves, right? Like, how
Yeah.
important is it? Like, at that height, I mean, I was in New York City, I was in Brooklyn, New York City at the time. I mean,
Mhm.
anybody who thinks COVID wasn't real or that, you call me because we
Mhm.
had bodies. We had bodies
Yes.
in trucks and I saw them. So, okay.
Yeah.
It was a pandemic. However, believe me, I was thinking some of the same thing. I mean, first of all, I don't know how anybody navigated caregiving during COVID. I don't know how, I mean, because I didn't have that. So
Mm.
I don't know how at the time. So I don't know how anybody could stand up during that with the pressure on that, knowing that you might die, they might die. I mean, it was bad there for a minute.
Yeah. It was
So
not
yeah,
fun.
so how important is it, But it's incredible that we have that judgment. And just recently, I don't know, I saw something somewhere. I'm always looking at something. And it basically said, no matter what it is, you are loved.
Yes.
Like, and I thought to myself, if I think about that, that's really true.
Hmm.
Like I'm loved. It does nothing else matters. How
Right.
important is it? Am I giving service to someone else? Yeah. And I'm loved. Like, it doesn't matter if I screw anything up or that I have roots. Like,
Yeah. I know. It was such an interesting little or big mirror being held up. This is what you have been conditioned to care about.
yeah.
And here you are in line with your parents during a life-threatening for them
Yes.
situation. Um, you know, so
Yes.
that was such a pivotal moment for me. Like, okay, this is stupid. There are so many more important things to care about and to focus on. And it was honestly like I'm not typically, at least I didn't think, kind of person who cared about that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But in that moment, it was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, this whole role, this whole all of it has changed. And there are things that matter, and there are things that absolutely do not.
It's life changing, and I think that we can take that story and that analogy and
Mhm.
put it on the fact that if in the caregiving role, in life in general, but in the caregiving role, if we make a mistake, it's a mistake. We are not the mistake.
Right,
That right? Or that, if something bad happens, doesn't mean we're bad caregivers or bad people or we're bad.
right.
We have to understand that. Like
Yeah,
the what we do to the judgment that and the negative internal dialogue that I think every caregiver has, I just wish I could just make it all go away. Because
yeah,
how important is it? It's not. You're
right.
showing up, they're loved, you're loved, you're walking someone home.
Yes,
Who
yes.
cares if Aunt Sally, who doesn't show up ever, and then either comes at holidays or calls and say, "Oh, I spoke to your mother and she's not making sense, and what are you doing?" Bye. I have to go now. I have a doctor calling me on the
Yeah,
other line. Bye.
right.
And then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But that's how I think that's society, and I think that's our culture.
Hmm.
I, th- I think, and especially with social media.
Yeah. I have started looking at the judgment of those who don't show up as um, it's their luxury.
Mm. Ooh.
I mean, If you are not there and you are not involved and you have thoughts and opinions, that's a luxury that the person who's doing the hard work does not have because they're doing the hard work. So, it's sort of like, I don't know, multimillionaires who have their yachts, living life, and that's great. Good for you. You're doing that over there. I don't have a boat.
Right.
I'm over
And
here living my life, and let's just not interfere with one another.
right. And I think that really speaks to who you surround yourself with, and
Yes.
I know a lot of people are disappointed. It's interesting who shows up and who doesn't. This, like that.
It's very interesting when you
Very,
think
very
certain
interesting.
people will show up and they don't, and then people you never would have expected
Yeah.
are there
Yeah.
consistently. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. I found that with my brain surgery. It was very interesting because I had a couple friends that just couldn't do, they couldn't. And I had to come to the place of they couldn't, not that they
Mm,
wouldn't or didn't, they couldn't. It just freaked them out too much.
mm,
And so I had to sort of, but yeah, I think that it's very interesting who can show up and how they show up and who can't. And
mhm.
I have, for me to not want to strangle them or be hurt, really hurt, I have to
Yeah.
think of them as can't being able to, and then surrounding myself with the people, even though it's a complete shock to me sometimes, and
Mhm,
really be grateful, even though we're worlds apart or were,
mhm.
like, wow, you got my back on this. Wow.
Right.
So I think surrounding yourself with people who really support you and get you and you trust in your
Mhm,
caregiving journey, and there are people there and you can find them. I believe if you show up as a caregiver, somebody's going to take care of you. I
mhm,
think I think you get angel points, and I think you have to trust that and go. I would talk to people in the pharmacy while I was waiting for drugs for my
mhm,
dad. I mean, I would meet
mhm.
people, so just surround yourself with really supportive, good people,
Yeah.
um, that you can turn to who will have you back.
Right. Yeah. And that is, you touched on something that for me was part of my grief in the process. The people you thought would show up who didn't, and learning to let that go and see and appreciate the people who did show up.
Yeah.
I'm making it sound easier than it is, but
Yeah.
I was not aware to even think about it. I had to kind of think through it and learn it the hard way. So for anybody who's listening, just keep a radar up for that.
Mhm. And be patient while you're healing, because I mean
Yeah.
there's so much grief. The minute you stand up as be it a caregiver, there's pre-grief, and there's grief of your old life, grief of the old
Yeah.
normal, grief of the relationship, the change, and then grief of people that you lose along the way and who don't
Hmm.
stay. Yeah, there's so much grief. And grief's a really strange companion. It'll grab you by the throat sometimes, and
Yep.
it's not an easy companion to dance with. And it takes a lot of time. And and there's layers to it. I still think there's all kinds of grief that I haven't even.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual grief when you lose somebody. My parents died within 7 weeks of each other. So I'm still unpacking some of that.
Mm. Yeah. You haven't even stood back up yet. And another wave, huge one, has crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's wonderful that you say that you need time and the space and just so much kindness for yourself.
Hmm.
Um, to wade through the grief, and be aware of it. I mean, just know that you are entitled to it.
Yeah. And you handle it however you handle it. There is no right way. And the judgment there, there will be judgment for how you grieve. And those people just need to take a seat and you do what you do.
Sit down,
That's the nice way of saying it. Just take a seat.
sit down, drop it.
So you have obviously experienced the long and the short of it, the wide and the narrow of it. Um, how has caregiving influenced what you're doing?
I think it's life changing. I think any of us who, I think once we go onto the caregiving land, you're never the same. I mean, things in
Right.
your life have shifted so drastically, even if
Yeah.
it's small things. I never thought, if you had told me when I was 30 that I would be taking care of my mom,
Mhm.
you know, and if you told me at 30 that I would completely heal my relationship with her and we would meet each other in a place that I'd always wanted, I would tell you were crazy. So I think that, it was a tremendous gift for me. It was one of the
Mhm.
hardest things I've ever done. And I mean, it was just, and caregiving is really hard. And I don't think my nervous system will ever be the same.
Same.
Um,
Yep.
right. I think it's down, but
Yeah.
having said that, it allows me to be with you and have conversations like this,
Mhm.
in a world that needs us and needs our help and needs the village and needs
Mhm.
we need our group. And I think it's absolutely made me a better me. It's helped me face all kinds of things in my life that
Mhm.
I couldn't get to, or I didn't it was too risky for me.
Mhm.
Parts of me that I held on to, that I protected, that, because
Yeah.
it's just all bets are off. I mean, you have to, if you're
Right.
going to survive and find the joy in it.
Mhm.
My particular journey, as I speak for myself, my particular journey was self-awareness and looking in the mirror and making changes for me.
Mhm.
So it forced me to change who I was and how I behaved, unlike anything else.
Yeah.
Right. And then in doing that, I became a better me.
Yes. Yeah. That, I mean, that is the thing. You do not come out of caregiving the same person you were going in, not even a little bit. I mean, same. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have, yeah, how can I say this? Because I don't want it to come out wrong and insult people. Um, but it gave me the courage to do my own thing rather than stay within the system that is built, that has all of the support and all of that. And there is a place for that. And I needed that while I was caregiving. Once caregiving was done, it was like, okay, I need to do my own thing so that I can do my part to support all of these people who need it. And I just wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do it before. Yeah, you're right.
That's amazing. And I think, and it's, to sort of build on that, I think, because people always say, how do you survive it? How do you get through it? And I think there's a choice. And I think because I was miserable in the beginning, because I wanted to do it perfectly and I was miserable. And I remember I was on the Jersey Turnpike. I remember I knew I had to change something, and I was the only one
Mhm.
that could change because they weren't. And
Yeah.
I chose to look in the mirror. And I think that that's where the survival comes in, and that's where the empowerment comes in, because those of us who choose to do this, we're put in a corner. And if we don't start to look at ourselves, that's why the message is, if you don't start to realize it's this survival's here. Like the grace is not, like the grace isn't
Mhm.
something we get. I mean, it is, but I'm saying the grace is in the grit. The grace is in,
Mhm.
wow, who am I? And who do I need to be to survive this? And
Mhm.
I think we change as people, and I think we adapt,
Yes.
right? And I think I think it brings out parts of us that would never come out.
Yeah, right. So throughout all of your experience and your wisdom, you have obviously you're a blogger and you've written lots of very good short form insight into lots of different topics, but you've also written a book.
Did.
So let's talk about it. I want to hear about it. Self-care for caregivers.
I was blessed to have someone ask me if I would write this book for them. And
Hmm.
at the time, and of course, there was a parameter and what I had to do and, whatever. And at the time, I didn't realize it, big dummy that I was, but there's 140 things that I've done or came up with or found. That's a lot, right? For my caregiving journey that worked for me.
Mhm.
And I wrote them down. And there's one on a page. So it's not this, because caregivers don't have time. It's sort of like a one day at a time kind of thing. You can pick it and find something for body, soul, mind, practicality, and you can look at it. And what was great for me, it gave me an opportunity to, within like all these tips and suggestions or whatever, to constantly be saying, you deserve this. That's the
Mm.
overall feeling of this, that this is not a luxury, that,
Right.
right? So sort of
Yes.
getting back to what we were just saying, that you have to be self-aware, like you
Mhm.
have to figure out what you need, like what's going on with me. What am I feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually? And what do I need to do about it right now to stop and get into that? Because if I don't, I'm not at optimal, and we're never at optimal case caregiving, but I'm not as well prepared or equipped or in shape to be the best caregiver possible. I'm going to be
Yeah.
snarky and exhausted and hopeless. And I don't, who wants that?
Right.
So I was blessed to be able to, make, from my worldview, I probably had to do like 139 of them on one day to get to a place that would help myself. But there's things we can do for ourselves to honor ourselves.
Yeah. And
So
I love the way that it's laid out because as a caregiver, sometimes often I think you don't even have time to read an entire chapter of a book. So just the one page, you can and you deserve to carve out 5, 10 minutes to read that page. And even if you don't do what's on it, at least think about it so that at some point when you do have time to do that, you can just do it.
oh, that's wonderful. Yes, and yes, because you deserve to do this.
Hmm.
Like we all need to do this. It's okay. And I think that's the big thing for caregivers. We're so focused on someone else, and we need to put the focus back, and we need to feel that that's okay. No one's going to judge us, and we're not bad caregivers. It gets back to this whole judgment thing.
Right.
You can stand up for yourself and get what you need. They want us to do that. My parents never wanted me to, or anybody I cared for. They felt guilty enough as it was that I was.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
no one wants
Right.
to see us sick and tired.
Yeah. Well, and speaking from my perspective as a parent, I don't want my kids using their time and their talents on me. That's not why I had them. That's not their purpose. That's not why they're here. Um, so this was eye-opening for me, the experience of being a caregiver, and not that my parents didn't plan or anything like that. It's not a dig at them in any way. Um, but we also now, because we are having these conversations, we can plan a little differently for ourselves. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway as a caregiver when you're going through it and going, okay, so this is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. This is what will happen, and you can do it differently because I think that mind shift is happening where it was before each generation expected, okay, well, I took care of you, so you will take care of me. And I am noticing a shift. And I think it's a good shift. I don't think that, you have kids with the expectation that they are going to take care of you. It's not their life's purpose. They do it out of love and they do it if it's necessary. But I think that we can help to continue that shift so that everyone has the quality of life that they aspire to.
Love that. Yes. And I think our world, this world is different from when we grew up or from when I grew up
Mhm.
for sure. I
Oh,
mean, it's a
absolutely.
whole different thing. I mean, a lot of serious stuff is happening, like from a
Yeah.
pandemic to, I mean, it can feel unsafe in so many ways. And
Mhm.
I think that those of us who can serve and care for each other
Mhm.
do that willingly, and hopefully we can get there without expectations about it.
Yes.
Right. Right. I mean, I think that
Mhm.
it's just the pure and simple. I want to do this. I want you to do this. Let's work together,
Yeah.
and not, there's no criteria for it. It looks any way it needs to look.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I think we need to look at it like that, that take all the pressure off,
Mhm.
of all of it. And I think we have to, and but I think it's smart, because I think generation after generation now is, because society basically, you took, like, my mom took care of my grandmother. My grandmother lived with my parents.
Yep. Same.
Nobody, nobody's, when my grandfather passed away and she was in her own home, and she fell down and broke her hip, her pelvis. And, my grandmother lived with my parents for at least 5 years, 4 or 5 years. We didn't call it caregiving.
Right. It
My
was
mom
just
didn't think
family.
it was just what you did. And
Yep.
I think, and how fantastic that is, and what an honor it is. But however, I think addressing what that means, or talking about what that means and how it impacts us, I
Mhm.
think there's a shift. And I think the numbers are going up, and I think that it's hitting all of us at once. And I think we have, pandemics, and I think alarm bells are going off. And I think the good news is that we're having conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because I think people get really sick and really upset and traumatized.
Yeah. Well, and I think, not to go too far down this path, but the other side of that challenge is everything now is so expensive that most people can no longer survive on one income. Whereas before, the person who stayed home was also the person who provided care for everyone, children, elders,
Mhm.
and that was their role. However,
Mhm.
now that most families have to have a dual income, this is where we are seeing this challenge and the concept of caregiving arise because from a financial perspective, families need that dual income, but they are also still taking care of elders or
Mhm.
sick partners and spouses or children with special needs and are not able to bring in that secondary income that is so crucial to their family's survival.
Mhm. I agree. I think the sandwich generation is, I mean, I can't even imagine. It's like navigating COVID with caregiving. I don't, I can't imagine. I mean, I was a working caregiver, so, there's challenges on that too, and I had to work
Mhm.
because I needed the income for my parents, so,
Exactly.
um, yes, I think our world has, I think the support that families have as they age has drastically shifted.
Yes.
And yeah, and I think that, it's a challenge. And I think that having conversations and getting as much support financially, and, we have to really campaign for that. I
Mhm.
know it's a scary time to do that, but, I think our needs, I think society's needs and caregivers' needs have shifted drastically in the
Yeah,
past couple generations.
agreed.
Yeah.
So let's lighten the burden a little bit
Yes.
and maybe give away one of your books.
Yes. Absolutely. I would love to do that. I would love to give this. I'll send a very wonderful participant listener a signed copy. I would love to do that and be honored.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you who are listening, you can find out how to do that on our social posts, and where you found out about this podcast, we'll let you know how to enter yourself to win a signed copy of Suzanne's book. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today, Suzanne. We have been talking with the Caregiver Warrior, Susanne White, who is an author, blogger, caregiver, and care recipient. Until next time, everyone, take care.